Hey Ubers, welcome to Gratitude Friday. This week we're going to do things a little bit differently. Um, there will be no video. I don't think any of the techniques used in the cards that I'm going to show you requires any explanation really. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about abundance. That's been a word that keeps coming up in my head this week. Um, I felt kind of badly about a comment that I made in a previous video about being bored with my stamps. I really have an abundance of stamps, and I think it's useful once in a while to just go back through what you have and make a really concerted effort to look at that, whatever it is that you have, with fresh eyes. I just wanted to share with you a couple of pictures um, that I took from things growing in my garden. I planted this kale late last fall. The seed packet was $1.50. It's Russian kale. And you can see here how wonderful of a harvest I was able to enjoy throughout the winter months. We had plenty of meals from that $1.50 investment, and really tasty stuff. So now it's spring, and this last week I was in the garden quite a bit. I've been slowly, um, sadly, pulling out the kale to make room for some melon seedlings that I got started. I'm growing a lot of different heirloom melons, and I'm hoping, although they require a lot of water, that the really intense sun and heat in Las Vegas will produce something really tasty that we can enjoy. So with a very heavy feeling in my heart, I pulled out these kale plants that served me so well during the winter months and gave us fresh produce. And I found these worms just writhing and weaving themselves throughout the roots. And it was just such an amazing experience. And I just wished that I had someone to share it with in the moment, because um, it really felt like a moment in which I was truly communing with nature. I had ordered some worm egg casings from a company called Gardens Alive um, last summer, and I stuck them in the garden, and I kept them watered in the beginning to make sure they got a good start. And as always is the case with these worm egg casings, within a couple of months, those worms start really, really aerating and feeding the soil. And when I pulled out these kale plants, they were just all over the place. Big worms, little worms, and just doing such great work. I make a concerted effort not to use chemical fertilizers. Um, it's just sort of a choice that I make, and I intuitively know that it's the right choice to make. And the investment in a very small investment in these worm eggs really feeds the soil, and I stay organic. And even now, I let a Brussels sprouts plant that I had accidentally, I let it go to seed, and I've just left it there, and all these beautiful yellow flowers have shot way up into the air, and I've got um, just wonderful honeybees and bumblebees and butterflies and hummingbirds visiting it throughout the day. So it's really such a pleasure to be out there. This is one kale plant that I'm just going to allow to go to seed. I haven't really done this before, um, probably because I've moved around so many times in my life, I've just never had a chance to do it. But I'm going to let this one go to seed and see if I can harvest seeds and plant them again next winter. I believe that this is an heirloom strain of kale, the Russian kale, so I think it'll come true from seed. Uh, But yes, so these were, I think they're ideal to grow in the winter months because they do taste sweeter once they get a little bit of a chill. It was interesting just, noticing how it tasted from one day to another. Right after a really cold night. If I plucked the kale the next day and I cooked it, it was significantly sweeter. So these are my melon seedlings. I think it's so cool the way they come up out of the soil, and sometimes their hard casings are still left on top for significantly long amount of time after they've already come up. But I will try and show some of these to you as they mature. And we'll just see what's happy here because the living conditions are pretty extreme. One of the reasons I'm sharing all these pictures with you is because, first of all, it's just so exciting to me, and I just love being out in the garden. I think, second of all, I think that, being in nature can really inspire your art or craft, either explicitly, whether you choose to use what you see as subject matter, or in a more intangible way, which is just to really make you feel so alive. I can't tell you how it felt to be handling those worms. It was so exciting. So the word today that flashed on the screen at the beginning of the video was abundance. I'm sure you have an abundance of stuff if you're a seasoned crafter. Um, and my experiment this week was to use my stuff, use what I have. And there was one set of stamp in particular that I've been looking at for a while. It's part of my Hampton footlong. It's this beautiful little graphic flower, and I wanted to see how many different ways I could use it. And I think when you do that, you start stepping outside of your comfort zone. And when you step outside of your comfort zone and what's safe and what you know, I think there are really significant opportunities to grow and be better in not just your art and craft, but in life. Um, so we're going to use the aforementioned stamp, and we are going to exhaust the possibilities of that particular stamp. I just chose 3 different projects. I think as I evolve as a crafter, I tend to lean towards um, a sort of clean vintage in the cards that I enjoy making. But this time I really tried to play around with styles that I've seen in various um, crafting venues, and see how it felt. So, I only chose 3 projects, but I mean, there are so many different ways you could style your card. This card is a little bit more along the lines of what I think I tend to do naturally, a little more vintage. And I don't know if you can tell, but I did use the stem portion of this graphic floral stamp to create a background with some beautiful boysenberry pigment ink. And I used a flower punch to cut out these 3 flowers from tracing paper that I've been using pretty often, and some craft cardstock. I had run out actually, and was really feeling the absence of my craft. I really love craft um, for, usually casual types of cards. But this one, when I put I used some copper pigment ink. This is the pigment inks are from Colorbox. When I used it on the blooms, it really lent a very rich feeling to the craft, which is not an adjective you usually use to describe craft. This love card uses a very bold color palette, really just white, black, and red, and hard edges, not soft like the last one. So it's got a very bold, modern feel to it, I think. And I used a Fisker's Heart Punch to create a border along the sides of the card, and there's some Echo Park paper that's peeking out from underneath through the heart shapes that I cut out. I used some cranberry color box pigment ink on the focal image, and then I heat embossed it with some clear fine embossing powder. And so you can get a really good look at the stamp here. I've been looking at it and looking at it and looking at it, and I never used it. It's very simple, actually, but I adore it for some reason. It's got some nice curvy shapes in it, and those tiny teardrop shapes that emanate out from the center of the flower are very eye-catching. Um, so yeah, I chose this heart punch. You know, there are a number of different heart punches out on the market. This one I think is more on the voluptuous side. I have another one from Marvu Cheetah that's more on the plump side. It's kind of rounded and has no pointed edges. And then there's one from Stampin' Up! That I don't have. I haven't sort of made the dive into Stampin' Up! Yet, but I really want that heart punch. It's a little folksy heart punch that I've seen used on crafting videos on YouTube. So this is where I really, I mean, it's very simple, and I tend to do very intricate cards, but I don't usually use, you know, all the primary colors in my cards. But I just decided to give it a try. I think there's a rainbow card making challenge being offered by Paper Crafting Magazine right now, and their challenge is to use, I guess, all the colors of the rainbow. Since these are 4x4 cards, there wasn't really room enough to do that on this card, but from these three you can make all the colors of the rainbow. And by just choosing those colors, I created a card that's very happy, youthful, and fun. And I wound some twine around the center portion of the card and snipped several pieces that were just a couple of inches long and then tied them all in there in a knot to create a little pom-pom, semi-pom-pom effect. And I just love how the twine is such a simple way to add some fun texture to your card. So I've got a couple of different twines from them that I've been playing with. So I encourage you to give this little experiment a try. I think through the doing of it, and you know, there's no judgment here. I'm totally guilty of the same thing. You can sort of lessen the guilt you may have about the hoarding that you may have done in the past with your craft supplies. Just taking a stamp or a tool and trying to find different ways to use it. And in the doing of it, you may discover new things about yourself. I think in the past I kind of turned my nose up on simple stamping with primary colors. It just, I don't know, something felt a little bit too simplistic about it. But I found that including all the colors of the rainbow in your card is a really easy way to infuse a real intense jolt of electricity to your card front. And you know, I've seen various projects also that use the rainbow of colors for really sophisticated effects. So I've been humbled, and I'm going to do more of it from here on in. So here's a final shot that I'll leave you with of the three cards that I created for this project titled One Stamp, Three Ways. I really hope you'll try it, and I really encourage you and would be so psyched to see what you come up with. And don't feel like you've got to come up with all your ideas at one sitting. I definitely stood up and walked away several times before finishing this tutorial for you. And actually, there's an article that I read on NPR that I will provide the link to on my blog about creativity that you should definitely check out. So visit me at my blog. I'll give you a complete supply list as well as a link to that article about imagination and creativity. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.